Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Back with former BYU team captain. Now I'm calling him the assistant centers coach, Connor Pay, with the BYU football program. Coach Connor, I call you for short, Connor. But the AP Top 25 preseason poll came out, and there was some thought that BYU, you guys finished 13th in this poll last year, was your final ranking in said poll. I know that the actual college football playoff committee poll is the one that really matters in the end, but that doesn't come out until late October. And polls obviously are a talking point, kind of you talk about milestones of the offseason. We wait until that poll comes out and then we start to debate it. But BYU is the first team out of the AP Top 25, and that's much further ahead. You talk about being ahead of where you were last year. You guys came out of nowhere, much like in Arizona State, and had to kind of fight your way to get into the poll. Do you feel like being just on the precipice of getting inside the top 25 is a chance for BYU to maybe more quickly move up the polls and make a name for themselves nationally if they get off to a hot start?
I don't care.
Okay.
Like I don't think. I mean, the first AP poll of the year has never been accurate to what is at the end of the year. They might get one or two teams right, but that's it. And so it really means nothing at all for the trajectory of your season. I do think that the guys should use it as motivation, if they see it, but I don't think it's something that needs to be dwelt on, where it's like it's there, like, hey, good, look, the rest of the country doesn't think you're a top 25 team after going 11-2. Like that should piss you off a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the extent of it. Right. At the end of the day, the rankings don't matter until it's the final one, whether finding out whether you're in or out, that's the one that matters. And so, I think the guys need to focus on where their feet are. And if they can just take things day by day and improve the way they're supposed to, then, we'll win games, and then winning takes care of the rankings.
Okay, I'll give you some stats. So Brett McMurphy, who is a voter in the AP Top 25, came on my radio station, I think it was last week. And Connor, he said last year of the preseason Top 25 teams, so the 25 teams in that preseason AP Top 25, do you have any idea how many of them finished unranked at the end of the year?
I don't know.
13, more than half finished outside the rankings at the end of the year. So that lends credence to exactly what you're saying there, is focus on what you can control. And that is obviously playing well, winning football games. And then at the end of the year, you kind of just see where the chips fall. And last year, 11-2, finished 13th in the country. It's a pretty phenomenal season, all things considered. I know that there was came up a little bit. You wanted to play in the Big 12 title game and the like. But to your point there, do you think it can provide some motivation knowing that, hey, we finished 13th last year, they've knocked us out of the poll already? Does that add an extra chip maybe to the shoulder of the team?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. And like, obviously it's not the number one factor, but it's like the guys see it and it's out there in the national media, just the fact that you're unranked, and, I think they should be motivated by it. But that's good to know that they have an under 50% success rate. I feel like,
well,
most jobs in the real world that involve any kind of forecasting, if you're in the 40-something percent of success, you get fired.
Yes.
So
now,
I don't know. I think everyone who votes on the AP poll should be fired based on those statistics. That's just my opinion. But
now, last year was a little higher than normal because history usually has between 6 and 9 teams ultimately are ranked preseason who fall out of the national rankings. And we talked to Brett McMurphy about this on DJ and PK, and he essentially chalked it up to just kind of the transient nature of college football these days. Transfer portal brings guys in and out of these rosters so often that it can change the whole look of teams in one offseason. So I think that lends itself, but to your point, if you're sub 50%, that's a pretty bad look in terms of a forecast for the season.
Yeah.
Now, also, I wanted to get your thought on this because there's been a lot of people out there, and I've been doing podcasts all off season long, who have been kind of upset that BYU's perception nationally has been downgraded simply due to one player, and that's Jake Rzoff, his departure from BYU. Do you feel like that is a fair thing to have had that judgment, I guess you'd call it, cast upon them with one guy leaving the program?
I mean, on one hand, yes. On the other, no. I think, you know, obviously your team is not one player, but at the same time, the quarterback is the most important player on your team. That's just reality, right? And obviously Jake was a really good player, and so I think I think that lends a little bit to what you're saying too, just because I think maybe that's happened in the national media simply because there's just some unknowns right now, which they're no different than last offseason, and so I think their natural instinct is to say, "Oh, they're not going to do better because we're not totally sure what's going to happen." When, you know, obviously that hasn't been true in the past, and I don't think it'll be true this year. But I and so I think is it absolutely crushing for our entire season? No, but I mean, does it have cause for us to have some things to overcome? Yeah, of course, a little bit. Jake was a good player, and your quarterback is extremely important to your team. But as far as I think, and from what I've seen at training camp, I have no doubt that one of these quarterbacks is going to be able to step up and fill the gap for us.
What is the feeling around the program? You and guys like Tyler Batty last year were such vocal leaders and really kind of setting the tone for this team. Do you get that same sense of that? And I called it a quiet confidence from this squad because you have guys like Isaiah Glasser and Jack Kelly, who may not be the most vocal guys. Tanner Wall also. I look at them as more lead by example, maybe than what you and Tyler Batty were. You're more prone to speak out. Do you get the sense that this team's still got a lot of good leadership and a lot of good motivation in it?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's definitely some guys who have needed to take that next step as leaders and maybe be a little more vocal than they have been in the past. And I think the addition of Keanu Tanavasa has helped a bunch on defense in that aspect. I think he's a really good leader. Um, and Chase has taken another step forward as a leader, kind of being the returning guy on offense in terms of leadership. And you know, there are other guys where it's like I think Bruce has taken a lot of steps in that direction too, because being a center, you're naturally the leader and the captain of the O line. Like that's just kind of it just happens naturally because of your responsibilities. And so I think he's taken on a more vocal role that's expanded beyond the O line. And obviously Waylon was that for us last year too, and is that. So I think it's been cool for me to now be able to kind of watch from a distance where I'm not exactly right in the throes of it, and be able to see like, okay, how has the leadership that Ty and I had last year, how did that, because one of our big focuses, and I've talked about this before in our previous episodes, is I felt like we were almost territorial about our leadership in 2023. And we just felt like every failure was our fault. So we were getting on everybody, yelling at everyone at practice, trying to get things right. And we tried to be as expansive as possible last year with the leadership and giving as many guys as we could opportunities to be vocal and lead. And number one, lead by example. Like, no one's going to listen to you as a leader if you don't play well. Like, that just isn't how it works. If you have someone who on your team who sucks and tries to break it down at the end of practice, everyone's looking around like, what the heck is this guy doing? And so it's like, first and foremost, your number one responsibility as a leader is to improve as a player, because and to be open about it
Yeah.
and show everyone how to improve. You don't have to be walking around saying, "Ooh, look what I did," blah blah blah. That's not what I'm saying. But it's like they watch you go do extra work. They watch you go up and do extra film. Like, they see those things, leading by example. And I think the guys on the team who have stepped into leadership roles have done that this offseason. Um, and so it's been fun. And honestly, it's been fun for me to sit back and watch guys who I remember when they were young freshmen, sophomores, who wouldn't say a word, and now they're out there leading and rallying the team. Like, it's cool. It's cool, and I think we have that.
Has there been one person who you maybe didn't expect necessarily to step into a leadership role that may have done that you've been surprised by?
Uh, I don't know if I'm necessarily surprised, but just personality wise, it's probably Bruce.
Okay.
Just because naturally Bruce is pretty quiet,
Mhm.
not a whole lot. Definitely not going to be the first one to speak up, and he's kind of flipped that on its head a
Okay.
little bit to where now. I mean, he knows now, like it's you are the center now, and so it's like when you come up to the line of scrimmage, everyone's looking to you. At the start of every play, and taking on that kind of mantle of responsibility, I think he's grown more comfortable having people have him or having people look to him in other areas as well, whether it's playbook or making sure we're on the right people, doing those kind of things, and on time to meetings, kind of being because there's administrative leadership that needs to happen too. And so I think he's done a phenomenal job with it, and I've been really impressed.